My name is Kate Maxwell, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Worldwide Defense and Intelligence at Microsoft. It's a privilege to be here with you today. We're super proud to be back at Eurosatory and proud to be a technology partner to the Allied Defense Forces around the world. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I'm honored to share the stage today with three esteemed guests from across industry. We have Amelia Gold with BAE Systems in the center, Raphael DeCormus with Thales, and Sebastian Loos with Epic Games. So in this session, we're going to take some time to explore the role of technology in today's defense landscape. And more specifically, we're going to talk about digital transformation as a key enabler of a future-ready defense force. So our panelists are going to share some thoughts on digital transformation trends and enablers and best practices, and also challenges around digitally transforming the defense ecosystem. And my hope is that by the end of this session today, we're going to know a little bit more about the role of industry in digitally transforming the defense ecosystem itself, as well as how partnership plays a big role in all of this, and more specifically, how partnership can help enable mission outcomes for defense forces. So I want to share with you now our agenda for today. We're doing opening remarks right now, but we're going to jump shortly into a panel discussion. So I have about 40 minutes of planned discussion with our panelists. We have a few questions to ask them, and then we're going to open up the floor. So as you hear from them today, please be thinking about what questions you want to ask. I would ask that you hold those questions until the end, but we'll have a mic that we'll pass around in case anyone has a question for any of our panelists here today. So at this point, I'd like to take some time to introduce you to our guests to provide some context on who you're going to be hearing from. So we'll start with Amelia Gold, Maritime Combat Systems Director with BAE Systems. Amelia began her career with the Royal Navy, where she served as an engineering officer with 11 years at sea and ashore, encompassing operational deployments as well as defense procurement and support. Amelia joined BAE Systems in July of 2013, where she has held a number of technical authority, engineering management, and transformation leadership roles since. Amelia recently returned to the maritime sector as the Combat Systems Portfolio Director, where she now leads a technology business that designs, manufactures, and integrates a wide range of technology solutions into complex naval warships for UK and international navies. Amelia is also a keen STEM ambassador and an active advocate and volunteer for multiple education-focused organizations. So thank you for that, Amelia. And thank you again for taking the time to be here with us today. I'm going to turn now to Raphael. This is Raphael DeCormus. He's the Vice President of the Thales Digital Factory. So Raphael has deep technology experience across a variety of industries, with past roles including CEO of NetSize, which was later acquired by Gemalto, and various technology companies across France, Sweden, the United States, and Madagascar. Raphael came to Thales in 2020 as the Vice President of Innovation at Thales Digital Identity and Security, where he helped launch new businesses and worked on technologies like biometrics, machine learning, cybersecurity, identity, and software as a service offerings, including cloud and IoT. Raphael is now the Vice President and Director of the Thales Digital Factory, with a mission to support Thales entities in the development of new digital offerings for defense and to adopt new ways of working across the company. So Raphael, thank you again for being here with us today. And finally, we have Sebastian Loos, also known as Seb, who's the Unreal Engine Business Director for Simulations at Epic Games. Seb began his career working as a software engineer for Ingenuity, where he supported multiple European projects such as the Eurofighter Typhoon training solution. Seb moved to Canada in 2006, where he began working on simulation and visualization products with companies like CAE, Prosagic, CM Labs, and D-Box. Seb also served as the manager for Rheinmetall Defense, Canada, European channels, before coming to Epic Games, where he is now the Unreal Engine Business Director for simulations. And during his career, Seb has focused on cutting-edge simulation capability, and he looks forward to connecting with anybody out there who's building VR applications, virtual reality, to train either humans or machines. So Seb, thank you for joining us here today. So now you've had a chance to meet our panelists. We're going to turn right to the question and answer session, and then we'll, again, take questions from the audience. So we look forward to hearing what's on your mind. I'm going to start to set the scene for today. I think it would be useful to start talking about what some of the key drivers are for digital transformation in the defense ecosystem. Why is it that this ecosystem needs to transform? And what trends are we seeing across the industry that are really driving this need? So Amelia, I'm going to come to you first. What trends are you seeing as key drivers for digital transformation, especially at BAE Systems?
So I think it's working, yeah. So thank you for the question. The key trends we're seeing particularly is the increase availability of data across all domains, and the amount and volume of data that's being produced by proliferation of sensors, both military sensors but also open source. And coupled with that, with the huge increase in computational power and also the availability of that compute power, not just to militaries, but again to anybody who wants to use it, as we're seeing currently, means that before, when you had the sort of observe, sense, decide, defect, deliver, the military had the cutting edge to be able to process all that data and compute it. They no longer have that advantage. And military advantage is always about being faster than your enemies, and therefore being able to enact a digital transformation where you can analyze that data, use that increase, harness that compute power in a different way is a real key driver for us. That's about the sort of mission drivers. The other driver is more around resources, and we've all heard about the lack of resources. Everybody's struggling to recruit. There just aren't enough skilled resources out there to enact the work that we need to do to protect the nations we serve, and therefore digital transformation is essential to be able to do more with either the people we have or with less, both in terms of people and resource and money.
Thank you, Amelia. Raphael, same question to you. I know you're the Vice President of the Thales Digital Factory. What trends are you seeing that are driving Thales's work in digital transformation?
This one. Thank you. So hello, everybody. So maybe three main trends really shifting digital transformation. One is on talent, as you mentioned, Amelia. The courageous young women, young men serving in our forces, they are in their 20s, so they cannot see a digital divide between what they use in their personal life and what they use on the field. So that's definitely something in terms of usage driving digital transformation. The second is a question of speed and velocity, capability to put on the ground, on the theater, quickly new solution on production, and being able to shift from a need to an actual solution as fast as possible. And then thirdly, it's a matter of cost. We cannot have any more of a very large program costing trillions, and we have to be way more efficient in the way we do things, and then the feedback loops before launching new program, new services, new products. And that's probably the third driver for transformation.
Thank you. And Seb, over to you. Anything to add on those two great answers?
There's a lot of things that's been said already, right? But yeah, no. One thing that we identified that is really particular with these days, compared to what we've seen in the past with, for example, the good old digital twin trend that we all suffered through if we have internet. The big difference today is that there's a convergence. It's not only about defense, not only about aerospace. The simulation geeks are trendy now. They're everywhere. The reason for that is that there's a convergence. It's not only us. It's also in fashion, in music industry, in gaming in some cases, or in how people produce movies. The convergence of desire to digitalize the process of how we are working, learning, educating each other, and communicating have never been that strong in so many industries at the same time and at the same pace. So you go here at Eurosatory, or tomorrow you go to a trade show in a very different domain, or you're going to a show or to an entertainment event, then you'll realize that the same technologies apply, implemented differently. And that's very unique to what we're living these days, this convergence of needs that we see.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer, right? There's so much we can learn from commercial industries and best practices from, commoditized technology that can be brought to bear against the defense technology stack. So I think what we heard there is
and I love this phrase, innovation at the speed of relevance is necessary for a modern defense force, right? Threats are moving incredibly fast. How do you get ahead of that? You have to disrupt and innovate at speed, and digital transformation is what can really help unlock that. So thank you. Raphael, I'm going to come to you first on the next question. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the paradigm shift that we're seeing right now with respect to mission capability and how specifically we develop new mission capability and then field it, right? So at the Thales Digital Factory, how do you see modern capabilities and methods, things like digital engineering, digital twin, modeling and simulation, and even cloud, changing the game for mission? And then what is Thales doing to implement some of those things?
So a lot of things, of course. The main question is how do we again put all the transformation that has happened in other industry into the defense and security industry. So what we're providing to transform, for example, our engineering teams is a full set of tools ready to be consumed, because now people are working almost from everywhere, also in the defense industry, where it questions a lot in terms of data sensitivity, access, and that kind of things. So we have to give the ability to reach those tools quickly and be able to find your development environment, whether you're working on equipment, on systems, on software, in a very easy way, in a state-of-the-art way, while meeting security requirements, compliance requirements. So that's something we are working hard to do that, and making it also from a cost perspective interesting is to make it scalable so that your cost base is also elastic. Hence, the cloud is definitely something to be considered. What we've done, and we've done it with Microsoft, is to say, okay, we take the best of breeds. We take the cloud environments, the cloud technologies, the elasticity, the automation capability, and we've put it under a restricted compliance scheme, which actually did not exist 2 years ago, at least in France. And so we work closely with ANSSI and the Cybersecurity Agency, and as well as the armed forces, to define what would be the best way to certify a cloud and accreditate a cloud in those environments. So this was a good journey where, in fact, it was really a quadruple innovation of technology. Take the cloud and put it in let's say in a closed environment, in a bubble, in a restricted bubble. In terms of business, how do we make it pay as you go and have really move out from the big old CapEx approach? From a methodology capability, because really it opened up the way to really be able to do continuous deployment, which was harder before. And of course, as I was saying, on a compliance perspective, because this framework did not exist before, and we were happy to put it on the market.
Thank you. Seb, how about you? I know you work in the modeling and simulation and AR, VR, MR space. Anything to share around digital transformation and what that journey's been like for you?
Well, there's that's where we live and breathe and at EPIC, and really this evolution of needs that we see is really coming also from a big challenge, which is in terms of training and missions, the challenge of deployment. And as you mentioned earlier, Raphael, it's this not only desire but absolute need to be able to bring training and rehearsal capabilities on site where people are deployed, and traditional approach of training and education where you bring people to the classroom, like we're doing here today, right, where you're all gathering around us, is in some cases not possible, because we want to provide this knowledge, provide this training to you somewhere where you are, to you somewhere else where you are. And being able to do that through the cloud is essential. A couple of years ago, it was hard to do. I'll share one example. When ITSEC, which is a big simulation conference, if you never attended, Orlando, every year, ITSEC, just after Thanksgiving, not a good timing, but a very interesting conference. At ITSEC, a couple of years ago, during COVID, we couldn't gather. It was the only time in more than 30 years that the conference didn't happen. And we learned that in the community, in the simulation community, 8 weeks, I think, before the conference. So we scratched our head, and we were chatting at the time with a couple of friends from Cesium, from Microsoft, and we decided, well, what if we put together a simulation application that's in the cloud for the first time ever, that shows the entire world, the entire planet to everybody, so that they can show that they can create scenarios anywhere, at any point, at any time, and they can have access to it during the entire conference. So it was a little bit of a stunt. It was crazy and bumpy, but we made it happening. And it was an interesting process where we learned tons of things, the 3 companies that worked on that. Well, NVIDIA was helping us as well in that process, and the 4 companies that were working on that. But it was to us a very tangible way to say, okay, that's how it's happening now. Training need to be able to be deployed to everybody where they are. And that's one of the key element and essential movement that's happening these days.
Thank you. Well said, sir. Amelia, same question to you. So I know BAE Systems has been a great partner with Microsoft in all things digital transformation. Can you share a little bit about that journey at BAE?
Yeah, so for us, this has been absolutely critical in the way we deliver some of the platforms that we have. You know, platform design and build life cycles are so long that quite often, you know, the technology that goes into them, the challenge of keeping that up to date so that the platform stays relevant by the time it comes out is a big challenge for us. And therefore, enabling digital transformation, both in terms of how we design and then build the platforms in the digital twins and using it, which really helped us leverage the recent export we did of the Type 26 frigate to Australia and Canada, meant it was a much easier export of the whole design solution, transferring that design to meet the requirements of the Royal Australian Navy and the Canadian Surface Combatant. So that was a great example of taking, you know, a single design that was done for a Navy and transforming it through a digital twin quite simply and enabling that design separation. The other bit was then about the missions that we put into the ships. And you know, reprogramming a platform for a mission is not a new thing. Typhoon can do it, F-35 can do it. But in the maritime domain, being able to shift things into a software-enabled capability and providing, again, that compute infrastructure, that digital backbone on the platform that links to a digital backbone ashore seamlessly is vital to make sure that the ships that the navies we serve have are able to reconfigure their mission depending on where they are and what they're doing. And by just downloading a series of apps, we launched an apps locker for the Royal Navy a year ago, and that enables to host pre-configured, pre-assured applications that any ship can then download depending on what it needs for its mission. And it could never do that before without coming alongside and having to do expensive and difficult hardware integration. And being able to transform that and change the way the Navy operates in the same way that, you know, air forces are already used to with Typhoon and F-35 has been a big game changer. The other part is more about the partnering approach and integrating capability from others. You know, defense is only as strong as the whole ecosystem that's within it. And being able to use, again, digital twin, maritime integration facilities, shoreside sensors, stimulators, that sort of thing, simulators and stimulators, really enables us to test all the integration. So when the ships deploy, when the aircraft deploy in a multi-domain environment, whether it's crewed or uncrewed, we know that it will work first time. And we proved that for the first time with the Carrier Strike Group. You know, it was a multinational Carrier Strike Group sailing from the Royal Navy. We were able to integrate all the different nations in our digital twin before those ships sailed together. And it was completely seamless, so much so that when we had a politician come to visit, he had no idea that it took all that effort to make ships and aircraft and submarines all work together seamlessly in a Carrier Strike Group. And we couldn't have done that without having a really good digital twin available ashore of all the platforms, being able to program them and have the right simulators, stimulation, everything that we needed to test it in all the different scenarios they might come into.
Thank you. So I think what I love about each of those answers is that we touched on not just the technology part of digital transformation, but all of the other stuff that's involved in any big transformation, right? You talked about business models, right? Seb, we heard you talk about people and collaboration environments and new training methods. And then we heard a little bit about process as well, things like export, import, development, deployment. So when we talk digital transformation, it's not just a digital tooling story. There's a lot more to it. Digital transformation is hard. We frequently hear from customers and partners that it's one of the most challenging transformations they will ever undergo, also one of the most worthwhile. And what we know is that it's a complete transformation, right? It happens at the intersection of technology and people and process and culture, which I think might even be the most important part. So with that in mind, let me ask you, what advice would you each offer to any organization that might be getting started on their digital transformation journey? And do you have any best practices or stories to share from your own respective companies' transformations? So Seb, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
Are you ready? Taking notes? I don't know if that will be magical, but there are a couple of things that are important. Recently, we've had that question asked by a very, very serious group, and I was humbled by the question, and really what it came back to is that this convergence of needs in technologies can be very, very scary, right? Because everybody has the feeling at some point that there's a very, very vaporous train that is leaving a station and that they're not into that train, right? And that's super scary. Well, the good news is that there's no train. There's no train leaving without you, okay? It's a global movement that's happening. It's something that you will embark, either you believe that you're doing it or not. It's an evolution of the way we work and we interact together. So we're all in that process of learning collectively. Nobody knows what it is happening in this digital transformation. Nobody have a roadmap with a clear vision on it. The ones who are telling that to you, in some cases, are very, very good at selling dreams. So there's no roadmap, there's no magical plan from anybody, and you're not missing a train. That's the first thing that I want to tell you. The second thing is that digital transformation, and that's the last thing. The second thing is that digital transformation is not about doing the same thing that you do in your current way of working and mimic it in the digital world, because that would be really, really useless and stupid. Because you're good at what you're doing and you're doing it today, the way you do it, and it's working, but it's augmenting it. It's bringing something novel, something that you can't do in real life, something that you can't do in the reality, right? It's talking to people that you can't reach. It's immersing yourself in environments that you can't go to. And it's also allowing to de-risk things from your life. The dull, dirty, and dangerous things that we would do in training normally, don't do them in real life, right? Do them digitally. Help people to, fail safely. And that's really what it is about, right? In our context here at Eurosatory, it's about fail safely and having an environment that really protects us digitally from doing it with our blood and our flesh, right? So that these 2 points.
Thank you. The train is not leaving without you. I like that. Amelia, over to you. Advice, best practices, maybe some lessons learned at BAE Systems?
Yeah, I think as an engineer, I learned that actually the technology was the easy part of digital transformation. And I know my engineers hate me saying that because they work late hours trying to make it work. But really the people and the culture and embedding, exactly as Seb said, it's the, in defense, we've kind of grown up with an acquisition process where we get a set of requirements and we know what the question is and we've kind of worked through what the answer is, and then it's just a case of turning the handle and coming out with something at the end. Digital transformation doesn't work like that. You sometimes don't know what you're going to get and what the outcome's going to be, and you have to change your mindset into that unknown and be able to take, I don't like the expression taking risk because I don't think it's taking risk. I think staying still is taking a risk. But I'll use that expression because I haven't found a new one yet. Maybe someone in the audience can say it. But that failing, for experimenting, failing fast to succeed slow is a great thing, because defense is slow, but we need to fail fast in order to succeed at the pace that we need to deliver things. And I think that cultural bit about getting people to realize that it's okay to experiment and okay to cycle things through, because there are the tools now available to analyze things quickly, and you're not like you're going to find out in 3 years' time that what you designed in that requirement 5 years ago wasn't right, because you can find out straight away. So to me, what I've learned, and certainly where we've been focusing a lot, is the people side of things, because there is definitely a kind of ingrained culture in defense across quite a lot of the traditional primes, I'll say it, and just shifting that mindset and bringing in partners with that different mindset has been great to get that diversity of thought. because some people can change straight away, some people take slower, but if you can see it, you can be it, and you can do it. So partnering with the right organization to help them see the difference is a really important part of it.
Beautiful. There's lots of good sound bites in there. Staying still is taking a risk. I feel that one, right? I think you're absolutely right. And sometimes the best thing we can do is just get started and scope it small, right? And then you learn and you refine and you grow. So thank you. Raphael, over to you.
Yes, so maybe rather than a big journey, a long journey, it's probably a suite of small walks that we do. And to take an example of a project, and I'll give you the pitch version, and then what happened in reality is that we had an air control system where we wanted to add a feature for flybys, so when two planes are coming to each other. So we want to see the users, we asked them how do you work, we did the first design, get the data, updated the software, and we were done. But actually it's not at all like that. So first of all, you don't have the users because they are in their base with the system you probably delivered 15 years ago, and yet you haven't been talking to them because you're waiting for the next RFP or the next bid. So the first thing is, how do you get them? How do you manage your contacts, maybe even informally, to get those information? Second is to get the data, that you don't have it technically because you're not connected, but most importantly legally, and you don't have the right to exploit it. It's not yours. And so same thing, how do you slowly look at with contract teams, export control teams, how do you manage to be sure that you have the ability to first sense the data, then play with it, then build on it. And then third thing is how do you update, because those systems are closed systems, and we have to completely rethink the way we do security. Of course, minimizing the surface of attack, but also making sure that we have an access, we can securely have a full life cycle, and not only every 15 years. And definitely, this is an open ecosystem when you have many partners, players, that you have to make it, and you have to make it alive.
Thank you. And I think life cycle is the right word here. That's what we're really transforming, the entire mission capability life cycle, and not just the development part of it. So thank you. Amelia, I'm going to come to you first on the next question, which is about partnerships, since you mentioned that in your answer. Digital transformation and technology acceleration in defense really hinges on partnership. And when we say that, it's not just about partnership between defense forces and traditional defense industry, but also we're pulling some non-traditional vendors into the defense tech stack. Frankly, Microsoft might be considered one of them, right? So I would love to hear your thoughts on what role you see industry playing to help the defense ecosystem at large to modernize.
I think we all have a responsibility, wherever we are, either in industry or the customer community or the end user, to sort of really drive this through and embrace it. But I think industry in particular, our role, and as a prime, I very much see our role as opening the door for defense. Exactly as Seb described, the game has changed. That convergence that you spoke about is absolutely, defense is no longer the leader in innovation in these things, and to get innovation you have to open the doors to try and get those ideas that we can't think about. So then that leads to the question of what role is left for the traditional defense companies, and actually I believe that it could be a great marriage, because what we are good at is that integration part. We understand the safety, security, assurance requirements, exactly as Raphael spoke about, to get something to, when you press a button, it fires a missile first time, safely, ethically, all those sorts of things. And we understand how to integrate things, both physically, in my case, onto ships or onto aircraft, wherever it is, but also functionally, as in how to make it work together so that it works right first time. And I think, industry being able to understand the role we can each play in the value chain, and having those kind of partnerships that are formed that saying, actually I understand that there is another company that could be way better at doing a particular software application, because I could never recruit the right kind of people, or I could never develop fast enough, or I don't have a broad enough market base to have enough diversity of thought in developing myself. But then what I can offer is productizing that for a maritime domain. That's that key partnership bit. And then the other part is obviously working with big companies like Microsoft about pulling in that commercial technology and sort of, again, working through to say, how could this be exploited in a sort of defense type use case? So I think partnerships is absolutely vital if we are to keep up with the speed that we need to.
Thank you. And I agree with you. I think, commercial and maybe non-traditional companies are a big part of that. So Seb, I'm going to come to you, right? People might be surprised to see a company like Epic Games here, but you've been involved in the defense space for some time. What are your thoughts on partnership?
You call me non-traditional?
Sorry, man.
I'm non-traditional. But yeah, it's a very valid question, and one thing is that we're always focusing on ecosystems, and what we're doing. People know us for the games. Didn't introduce what we're doing. Aside from that, we have what we call a game engine. It is a software tool that allows people to create virtual environments to either build games or experiences or simulation applications that are used either to train people or train machines or reflect on situations before they exist. So that can be used a lot in this context that we're into here. So with that in mind, we just produce that tool, right? We don't produce the end user solution. We don't build simulators. We build low-level elementary brick that people call in the software world a development platform that allows other. I'll speak louder than her. And that platform, I'm louder. That tool is needed a lot of integration, a lot of work that's done by the traditional vendors of that field to be integrated and delivered to the end users. So we work with integrators, big integrators, all small integrators. We work with service providers. And we also work with software developers that take that elementary brick that we put together, that development platform, and transform it into a simulation software. There are a lot of names that we can quote, and I can't quote them all here, and that would be bad to forget some of them. So I invite you to chat after if you want to learn more about it.
Thank you. And we're on our final slide, and we're going to share all the booth locations so you can visit with each of our panelists later. Raphael, over to you. What are your thoughts on partnership for the defense ecosystem?
So definitely, for me, it's a transformation that already has happened in other industries, like I was mentioning, and I've been fortunate to see this movie on the fintech world, the telco world, and it's happening now on aerospace and defense. So we cannot succeed alone, that's for sure. Even if we have a large French established company, or maybe because we are a large French established company. So clearly we have to work with the best on the market, and also we have also to make sure that we are able to evaluate at multiple speeds. We need a strong foundation, as you were saying, Amelia, on resilience, compliance, security, but also we need the creative sparks on top of it to really bring up new solutions, and be sure also we reach places in our customers that we don't usually do. That's why we need those relationships with smaller company, large tech groups, editors, vendors, and be able to offer a comprehensive solution that makes sense in the end for the user and the customer.
Thank you. We cannot succeed alone. I think that's probably the key takeaway from all of this, right? And I think we're all in it together. So we're going to come to one final question here before we open it up to the audience. We're talking about some big things and some big changes for defense. And, none of this is easy to implement, but it's a journey, certainly. What changes do you believe are necessary in the defense ecosystem itself to make digital transformation a reality? And that might include culture, it might include acquisitions reform, you name it. Thoughts on that? Anybody? I'm going to open it up. Anybody want to answer that one first? Go ahead, Seb.
I'll start because that's impossible to finish, because that's a huge topic. So I'll start with a couple of observations. I think as much as the evolution and the transformation is really coming from people, I think the blockers are also coming from people. I think the fear of this evolution, the scare of seeing new ways of doing things sometimes blocks us. And we have so many traditional ways of doing things, so many habits in the way we procure, in the way we research, in the way we communicate about technologies, that we're sometimes a little bit stuck. And that could be policies, procurement policies, that could be structures, communication, access to information. I think the most important thing that we need to do as a community, and that's why coming back to trade shows and conferences is super important, is communicate together to understand what we really want to achieve, what the end users really want, not what they think technology can do for them, because technologists know better than the end user what technology can actually do, but really help the end user to tell us about the end use, about the real use cases, and then having conversations, global conversations within the community. I think that's the essential part. We see it happening. I think we can have it happening more.
Thank you. Amelia?
Thank you. I'd echo some of that, but I think the second point I would want to make is more around that sort of mindset shift about not considering, really thinking about the standing still, getting more of the same, is more risky than change. And I think if there's a way we can get that ingrained, not just into industry, but into the procurement community and everything else, that's saying actually the best way we can evolve is by continually changing. And that means of everything then, because the procurement approaches that we use, that bit about we have a requirement set, a competition, people answer that, and then you turn the handle and deliver, that can't work in this context. So, how do you end up changing the procurement system so you end up with a dual track procurement system, one for the platforms, one for the technology? What is the right approach to enable this sort of quick iteration of things and that sort of experimentation and trials of things that the sort of traditional waterfall procurement approach does not allow for?
Thank you. Raphael?
So maybe I would say that first you have to want to transform. I think it's an act of will, and there are many fears, blockers, and not going there. Probably one of the key things is that for me we have to go back to the essence of the requirements. Why are the customer is requiring such thing, and how can we answer to this deep need with what we have at hand? And this is changing very fast. And so I believe really that if we stick to the open specs, we'll probably redo what we did for 20 years in a digital way, or trying to, at least, as you mentioned, Sebastian. But probably let's go one step up or a few step ups and say, okay, what is the essence of the requirements? How do we answer it? And take expertise from other people in the ecosystem to answer that.
Thank you. So I think, let me summarize kind of some of the themes that we heard there, right? People, and especially transformational leadership, but at all levels in an organization. User feedback is critical, and we need to have conversations across the entire defense ecosystem. Risk postures are a really big deal. Procurement reform, I know, is a hot topic always, and it certainly fits here. And innovative and fail-forward mentalities. And to me, all of this comes back to culture, right? We need to get the culture right to make sure that this transformation takes hold. So thank you. I appreciate the candid thoughts. We're at a point now where we're going to open it up to audience questions. Anybody out there have a question for any of our panelists around digital transformation, or maybe some of the journeys that their respective companies have been through? You guys solved everything for digital transformation. Questions? All right. I'll ask one more of my own, and then we can come back to it. So let me ask you this. As we think about digital transformation, how do we define what good looks like? And can you ever really, truly be done with it? What are your thoughts on that?
So maybe I will take the French way saying doing things that are impossible. Huh? No, I mean, for me, there is no end to the transformation because it's a constant evolution. A good transformation is probably when a customer is receiving a solution it didn't think about, because when in the journey of providing a solution we discover an issue or a pain point that was deeper than the one we were working on or asked solution for. And that's for me probably the key thing is having the customer willing for more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say digital transformation is never going to be done. If you see a roadmap that has and will deliver it on this date, don't believe them, because there'll always be more data, there'll always be more compute, there'll always be new tools. So to me, when you know you've got the journey right, is when you've got an adaptive organization that embraces all those new things as they come in, and a learning organization, and really that growth mindset all the way through that acknowledges that isn't as we are now, where it's all like, oh gosh, there's this new thing come in, how do we deal with it? the fact that we're having this discussion about how we enact digital transformation shows that we're in this cutoff point. Actually, what I'd like to do is come back here in 10 years' time. We're like, right, what are the 10 new things we're going to have to deal with this year, and how do we adapt to that? So it's not a transformation; it's a continual. We adapt and we grow as we go.
Agility, I love it.
So yeah, that's that's a big question, and I think, we need to pay attention a lot. I mean, we say it's not, there's no train, it's a journey, not a destination. I think we have that all taken care of. The important bit is that we need to remember that digital for the sake of digital is a bad thing. We need to use digital technologies and modern technologies when we need to. We need to remember that all these capabilities that we see now are tools, like any other tools that we have in our arsenal, right? So you won't use a screwdriver to put a nail on a wall, right? So in some cases, you need to really reflect, and that's what makes us good, right? It's when we pick the right tools at the right moment for the right use case. So, being good of finishing the task of digital transformation, as you said earlier, is not possible. But it's a methodology that we need. She's only speaking when I'm speaking, right? Or with you too? There's something bad. Amelia, did you think of something? I feel bad now. Yeah, that's the app, right? So...
Dear visitors and exhibitors, come and live the real CBRN disaster experience with the health crisis demonstrator on the Eurosatory live demonstration space. Permanent animation from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Are you done? Okay. So yeah, really, I think it's not. There's no end to that trajectory that we're taking, and we're in a movement. We're in a global movement that's happening, in which we're all collaborating, and I think that's what makes it a success. It's when we all collaborate and realize that we should not use the wrong tools at the wrong moment.
Well said, sir. Last call. Questions? Yes, absolutely.
Hello. Thank you for your good, beautiful answers and the comments. I'm come from Korea, South Korea actually. No, not North Korea. So then I would like to get some comments and answer from you. So before that, I a little bit introduce my country's situation. So Korea is a very wonderful success of some semiconductor, such as Samsung and some software engineering and etc. So in our country, so actually there is some gap between the defense and the civil area. So definitely civil area, a lot of is very big success in the worldwide, the renown and some company and the people. So but comparing to civil and the industrial sector, so defense sector are a little bit retarded. So maybe, I don't know, in the European country and the United States are definitely the defense leading country. So, but in my country, so defense, there are some serious, and the leakage of even the software engineering and the people from the defense to the civil sector because high income and the good the plan or something. So, in the very shortage, the problem we have to challenge the face. So also, and my customers, actually the military services and the government in the defense area, a little bit strict and not flexible. And still, even though they really try to and eager and to do act and strategically or policy, so in the digital transformation or so in AI and machine learning, so bad. So and then some infrastructure is a very high and then barrier and then some classification and then some and the policies are still and so not so much flexibly changed yet. So and even though their intention to get some really involved in the digital transformation and some digital mindset change. But still, we got some very serious problem to transform and transition. So, and your countries, your European countries, or including United States, is there some between the defense and civil and gap, or some, how can I say, and the different situation? It's my first question. And on your comment on your the client and the customers. So they are really flexible and easily changing their mindset or some in the digital transformation or some. And that's my two questions. That.
Okay, I'll start on the first one. So I think we definitely see people moving to maybe shinier or faster industries that are working in the defense, and that's true that the real difference, and I come from the civil sector, is the notion to speed and the relationship to time. So, for example, a few weeks after I answered the Thales Group, we had a meeting and a launch on something that goes underwater, and the project kickoff was to have a launch date in 2041 and the exit date and end of service by 2091. So clearly you cannot apply the super fast cycles, and you have a technology and ways of working that should be able to endure time. So I think one of the reasons, not maybe the package, or it's probably the relationship to time. And I believe that the people in our team that are probably the most efficient is when they are shifting back and forward between civil industry and defense, because they bring with them all their methodology, their knowledge, and their culture, as you were mentioning, Kate.
There's this concept of great resign that we're all facing. That is a huge problem for resources everywhere in the world. I'm not a specialist in HR, but what we observed is a very strong and fast mobility of resources. I'm talking about people, talented people going from companies to others, following the vibes that their personal opinion drives them towards, and it becomes harder and harder for any structure. Either they are operating in traditional industries or even in more maybe non-traditional industries, as we mentioned, to retain people within their groups, and it's valid in all segments. And what we observe within our reach in my company is that it's happening everywhere globally. So I think the case of Korea is not unique because you have a very dynamic industry in the country, and the very dynamic industry that you have is probably stimulating even more this type of dynamic. Would be my understanding.
I think I absolutely agree with the previous two. I think the only thing I would add is two things. We have something, I think, quite special, and I might say because I'm ex-military, but we have a purpose in defence. And whenever I talk to, some of my, mid-career people who end up leaving, they nearly always leave for more money. And that's fine because they're at that stage in life where, the family's growing, they need another bedroom in the house, whatever, that sort of thing. And I get the defence can't pay enough because our margin aren't as big. But what I always say to them, come back, because when you want your pension and your steady job and that sort of thing, defence will give you that plus the sense of purpose that you get. And I think we're sometimes a bit shy, and it's been really interesting watching world events at the moment because defence is back on the news again, isn't it? And the importance of what we do and how we protect, the nations that we live in and we serve. And I don't think we talk enough about that, both to our employees but also when we recruit. And actually giving people, young people today, they want a sense of purpose. And we should be proud of the purpose that we provide. So that's answering the recruitment question, I think, that it should be less about salary, more about purpose. I think your other question was the defence civil thing. I think that's where we all spoke about the partnership bit. Actually, that diversity of thought, that cross-pollination is vital. So it's fantastic that you've got a really good civil industry. Embrace it and use it and bring it into the fold, because you'll be amazed what that can bring in, and that cross-pollination is how innovation happens.
Well said. Thank you for the question. So I know we're at time here today. I want to take a moment and thank our panelists. Seb, Amelia, Raphael, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
I hope the message that came through is that I really do think that this defense ecosystem is at an inflection point right now, and we need to figure out how to innovate at speed, and I believe that digital transformation and partnerships are a critical enabler of that. So, you know, it's going to take a combination of traditional defense and big tech and independent software vendors working together to make this a reality, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but I'm confident that we're on the right path. So as you walk around the halls over the next few days, I would encourage you to think about your organization's own digital transformation journey. Maybe think about where you are, where you want to be, what your methods are today, and do they make sense for the tomorrow that you're trying to set yourself up for? And then be thinking about who you can partner with in order to get there. So I really believe it's going to take all of us working together to make this defense ecosystem future ready. And with that, thank you again for being here. We invite you to join us at each of our respective booths to continue the conversation. But thank you so much for your time and have a great show. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks, Kate.